Tara.
Oh, and I'm Mike.
And I'm Jill.
And today we have decided to mix it up. Mike and I switched places.
Feeling off balance over here.
Do you think that's going to throw everybody for a loop?
It's going to throw everybody off.
Throwing me. Now I've got to look over here to see your mom.
You poor thing, Michael.
All right, so today we are talking about Mom's Story Part 11. Are we on 11?
11. Yeah.
Wow, you have a long story.
I do have, don't I?
Makes me tired.
I know. That's why I'm so worn out. Oh, Michael.
So we left off where the house was getting foreclosed on, I think. Yeah. Is that where we left off?
No.
And you were getting ready to start the business. You went to the banker and he said, oh, I just sent you the foreclosure notice just to try and get my dad to pay something. And you asked him if you could start the business back up again.
Yes.
So explain to everyone, because we keep talking about our player piano business, but exactly what did you do?
Okay. It's kind of hard to explain, but inside a Nickelodeon piano or a player piano is a whole bunch of like mechanical mechanism, different parts, tons of different parts and things that you hook up to the piano keys, and then it automatically plays by itself. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to the rest of the world. So what it is the calliopes and the player pianos that you see in amusement parks.
Yes, so we didn't build the piano
made the parts.
itself. We made the guts that went inside to cause the pianos and the calliopes to actually do their keys and their pipes to work, and all the instruments work. And we did some of the instruments too, a lot of the instruments for the Nickelodeons. So
we made the inside parts. And to put it in perspective, we were only one of, 2 or 3 companies in the whole world.
No, we were the only one.
Were we the only one then? I thought Player did it too.
Well, Player only did player pianos, but we were the only ones that did Nickelodeons, calliopes, band organs, and that type of thing. We were the only ones in the world.
Yeah, so everybody else would have to make their own parts if they wanted to make these player pianos or calliopes.
What it would be like compared to nowadays is having a computer and you have just a pile of parts, and you have to make the computer, but you also need to make the parts to make the computer.
Yeah.
And you had to start from scratch. For every time you would do a new computer for yourself, you'd have to start from scratch, where we just presented them with the computer, basically. So they would put it'd be like present them with the computer with the mouse to plug in. Otherwise you'd have to build the computer and the mouse and everything.
You did that with player pianos.
Yeah, we did that with player pianos. And so that's why it simplified people's lives in that realm so much. And a lot of these people didn't just build for their own personal use. They had customers that they would build pianos and Nickelodeons and stuff for and sell to other people. So this was like a full-fledged business for them. We would give them the parts, and then they'd build up the pianos and sell to other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so people can kind of get a picture of what we did, because it's kind of hard to explain to people what exactly, we were doing. You can say, well, we made player pianos, but people don't understand the full impact that we were the only people making player pianos.
For example, if you didn't even just add the instruments and you just did a straight player piano, you would have a little block of wood you'd have to attach to every single key of the piano, and that block of wood had about 25 holes we had to drill in it, and another 10 pieces we had to glue or epoxy into that on top of that. So that little 2-inch block of wood took a ton of work, and each piano key, which is like 88, had to have one of those little blocks of wood. Then on top of that, they had to have a special little billow that was vacuum billow that you had to use attached to it too, and all this cord tubing had to be attached to it, and all that had to be done to every single key of the piano inside before it would play automatically. And then you had another huge, what we call the spool frame, that put the paper roll on. A lot of people have seen the paper rolls on there. That was another whole big item we had to build, and then you attached all these hoses and all that type of thing.
And the pieces you were talking about are called valve blocks and pneumatics, and we had to put valve blocks and pneumatics on every single instrument also.
Yeah,
it wasn't just the keys. You had to do it all for every instrument, and there was, I don't know, how many was in there? 20 instruments sometimes? I don't know.
Yeah.
There was a ton.
If you put a xylophone in, and the xylophone had, say 20 little bell things along it, then we had to do 20 pneumatics and stuff to go to each one of those. So not only did we have the 88 for the piano keys, then you had to do like the 20 for the xylophone, and for each one of the keys for that.
Yeah.
So it
was a big process.
Yeah.
And we did it all in our basement and in our we had an upstairs apartment type thing in our house that used to be a doctor's office. We had an old Victorian house, and upstairs we had the workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember David and my brother and I would sit and we would cut out parts, because you had to cut out these parts while we were watching TV. We got paid a penny for each one we did, and we just thought we were making so much money. And so, yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, you guys started working really young. You were only about 10 and 11, and I had you doing parts then for me. You did a lot of work for me. I wouldn't have probably made it if you guys hadn't of.
That's the way we have the kids shipping books now. Well, we used to. We need to get them back on it again. But
Yeah. So I put you to work for doing, it was a lot of repetitious, a lot of assembly line repetitious work too. It was. So,
yeah.
Well, I went and what happened was I told the gal that I was quitting my job, and gave her 2 weeks notice, and then she got angry at me and told me just to leave right then. And I was hoping to help her out by doing the 2 weeks, but it was going to help me out too, because I now had no income again. I was hoping to have that 2 weeks income while I got the business up and at least figured out what I was doing. So now I had no income, and the next day I had to get started right away. And I was so scared because I had to call all of our customers, our old customers. And because it was such a specialized work, it wasn't like I could go out and get all brand new people, and just say, I have this product for sale, you want to buy it, to a whole bunch of new people.
You couldn't just take it to a craft show and expect to sell. Not to mention you'd have to invest a huge amount in materials, in wood and leather and all kinds of stuff. So I had to call all the people first off the bat, because they were mad at Dad because they placed orders, and he would say, okay, I'll have it next week, and next week would come, and he'd say, well, I'll have it next week. And it was kind of like a ripple effect, because they had to get their stuff out for their customers, so he kept procrastinating. Sometimes he didn't even end up giving them the parts after he told them they would. So they were not happy campers. And, it's one of those things, again, where when I say what you do affects everybody, it really affects. You think procrastinating is no big deal. I'll just put this off. I won't clean this today, or I won't do this today, or get this done. But by Dad procrastinating on these parts, it affected his customers and their customers, and they had things that they were going to do with these pianos. They had to have them in parades, or they were going to put them in museums, and it just went down the line, and it was a big mess. Because we had these in like Disneyland in Tokyo, and we had it in several amusement parks. Our stuff has been all over the world. And so these were major customers that our customers had, that he was just blowing off.
Yeah, like the St. Patrick's Day Parade would be coming up, and they'd need a Calliope for the parade.
The one in Chicago?
The
one in Chicago?
Oh, we had them in New York.
No, the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had, it was like I think they were having a parade in New York, and all over we'd ship them to, they did the parades for all different things all over the country, and he would not get them done. And so here they were, the deadline for the parade coming up, and they don't have their thing, and so The parade people were affected. It was just like, really, it was a mess. And so I was so scared to call them. But I learned at this point, I got over my fear of what other people would think. I could not think this anymore. And so I called them. And I was so surprised because every single one of them, of course, I was kind of friend with these people too. We'd known them for years. We'd met them at conferences, and I talked to them on the phone, taking their orders and things. So I'd known them for years, and they were really nice. I could not believe it. I think they were desperate is what it was, because they were so excited. Nobody was doing these now, and it was just taking them. Okay, we're talking the difference of doing like a month's worth of work compared to 2 years worth of work without our parts. That's how major this was. And so they were so excited, and they started placing orders. That very day, they started placing orders with me. I couldn't believe it. And within a week, I had some of them sending checks with orders. So here I had money coming in right away. I mean, it was just amazing how they were jumping all over it. Now, I had to be careful with the money, because don't think that I'm getting thousands of dollars in here. There was a few that sent the checks in, and I had, like, if I got $200, I had to be very careful. And this is how you got to do all your money, even if it's not in business. I took $50 of a $200 check and would give us to use that week for groceries or whatever. The other $50 I had to take and use for supplies. And then $200 of it I set to one side in case I didn't get the parts shipped to them. Then I could give them the money back. You see what I mean? I didn't want to get myself back in a corner that I didn't get the parts done and spent all the money. So I wanted to be a little bit more careful, where Dad had just spent the money sometimes.
It's called being responsible. What a concept now.
Yeah, and that's what it boiled down to, because I knew I could pay him at least the $100 and eventually pay him the rest of the money back. And we didn't have everybody send a deposit in right away. We had a lot of people that just ordered the parts, and I didn't get the money until I shipped it to them, and that type of thing. So you do not know how hard I worked those first 4 weeks. I had to learn, okay, most guys take shop for maybe, 4 months, 5 months. They learn how to do like a drill press and a lathe and a bandsaw and skill saw type thing. I had 4 weeks that I had to learn how to use all those things. I had a huge punch press monster machine that I hated. And then I had injection molding machines. I didn't know how to use a bandsaw. I had to learn how to solder. I had even to use a blowtorch. We had a lot of motorized. The spool frame that had the paper roll on it had a motor on the end of it. I had to learn how to do electrical stuff and hook up transformers and capacitors and all this electrical wiring stuff. BJ would just love that, wouldn't he?
Well, what people don't realize is the big punch that you were talking about, you had to be careful, because if your finger was in the way, you could punch it and you would have no finger left.
Oh, you have a hand.
So this was, you were doing this with, a 10, or I guess I was probably like 11 or 12. But, 2 kids around the house with all this machinery.
Oh, it was so I was so terrified. That had so much pressure, and it'd come down so fast you couldn't even react to it. Mm-hmm. I was so scared of that thing. But yeah, so we had a lot of really seriously wicked machinery, and I was scared even for myself, let alone you guys.
It was a machine shop.
Yeah, it was literally a machine shop, and we had all kinds. The bandsaw sitting there. It could do a lot of damage and everything. So I had 4 weeks, and my poor brain was fried. But it was interesting, because when I had gone to jail for that 20-30 minutes in the last video, Dad was so horrified by that. In one sense, it worked out good, because even though he didn't provide for us financially, after that happened and I then decided to start up the business, he was so upset about that he started helping me with the business. And even though he had another totally different job, he came over 3 to 4 times a week. he was already coming over anyway. So he would come over, and we had kind of a routine down where he'd come over about 10 in the morning, and he would set me up on something and get me started. And I would work on that all day long, and then Mr. Gordon, our production manager, would come out in that evening I take 2 hours off when you got off of school. Then Mr. Gordon would come over, and I would go down and work with him, and he would show me stuff and set me up with more things, and I would work on things till about 10 o'clock at night, and then get up the next morning at about 5:30 and run downstairs and start working again, and I'd work until about 10, and I'd have all those parts for Mr. Gordon done, and then Dad would be there, and he'd start me up on another whole batch of stuff that I would start working on until so it kept a cycle kind of going like that. So it really helped. I was so scared that I couldn't do it. I knew I could eventually, but I couldn't do it fast. No human. Yeah, even if I'd been a genius, I couldn't have done this. It just wasn't humanly possible. So by Dad coming and helping with that, I know a lot of people think he was horrible, but he really did have. He really wasn't.
He had some redeeming qualities somewhere. Need to find them, but
exactly, he did. And so he did help me with that. So we're plugging around, doing the parts and everything, and we're trucking along pretty good for a couple of months. And I come home one day, I don't know where I had to run to real quick, went someplace and came home. It was about 5 or 5:30, and I got in, there was no electricity. And I thought, oh, we must have had a power outage, but it wasn't storming. I couldn't figure out, what was going on. I went to the front door to get the mail, and there was a big sign on my front door, and it said they turned the electricity off. And until I paid, and it was a huge amount. It was over $1,000. It was a huge amount of money. Until I paid this bill, I would have no electricity. And I looked at, and I couldn't figure it out because I paid our electric bill every month. And I was even applying to some of Dad's old stuff from when we were in Colorado. So I couldn't figure out why they were doing this. And the address, it had Dad's name with a weird address. Well, come to find out, when he left, this is one of the bizarre things that I thought, how did this even happen? When he had left us, he went that day and went to a friend's, to stay at a friend's until he found some place to move into. So he was at this friend's place for a couple of months, and then he moved into his own place. Well, instead of paying this friend rent, the friend was having financial problems, so they went and put the electricity in Dad's name for this friend's apartment. And when Dad left, they didn't change the electricity out of his name. So this guy just kept using the electricity and not paying for it. Well, then he, even after so many months, he moved, and the new people that moved in there, they were using it. How this ever happened, I have no idea. And they were getting free electricity, and they weren't worrying about it, and they were using the air conditioning and just going for it. And so our address was the house was still in Dad's name with our address and everything, and that was the only address they had for Dad, the electric company had for him. And so they just turned off the electricity at our address. So here it was Friday night. This was back when, before credit cards, you couldn't just go pay it with a credit card or something.
Or online.
And they weren't quite as lenient. They didn't care if people had to go without electricity. Nowadays, if it's the middle of winter, they leave the gas on for a little while or something. But they didn't care about that. You couldn't call and say, I need it hooked back on, I've got the money to pay. You couldn't do it online, anything like that. You had to wait till Monday to go and do this. Well, not only was it Friday afternoon, but it was a long weekend, like a 3-day holiday. I can't remember, I think it was maybe Labor Day or something like that. So it was a long weekend. So I called Dad, and he looked at it, and he told me what had happened. So he said, I'll take care of it. Actually, he did take care of it this time. But he had to he didn't even know where this guy was. So he had to track down the guy. They had to get the money together and do all this. So we were at least 10 days with no electricity. And I hadn't planned on it or prepared. We talk about not really being totally preppers and that type of thing. But after these things happened, I now am prepared if I have to go without electricity.
Well, people are like, well, I'll know if a hurricane's. You never know. Like when we had the floods 3 years ago, they were not expecting it to flood. It happened with less than 24 hours notice. It was like, bam, it was there.
Yeah. And even when we were starting, they were saying, little small stream floodings and.
Yeah. It wasn't major flooding until then. And people say, oh, well, you never know. I mean, our son is a pizza delivery guy. And he is always delivering to the electric company at midnight because someone is trying to hack in and turn off the power for everyone, and they're having to keep it on. We don't want to be paranoid, but at the same time, don't be a sitting duck either. Yeah, well, and this is why we are this way, because we've had to live without power for a while.
Yeah, for quite a while too. And so this was 10 days without so I didn't have a stove, couldn't do laundry. If you think about it, I mean, I wasn't even just worried about whether I could blow dry or curl my hair. That was just, a lot of people, I remember when we lost electricity with the ice storm, they were panicked because they couldn't fix their hair. They didn't know how to fix their hair. I'm thinking, I was worried about fixing us food. And so I lost everything in the refrigerator and freezer at that point. I didn't know anybody that I could really take the food over to save. And so even now, I don't have much in my freezer. A lot of people I know freeze like a month's worth of meals and freeze. And you can do a little bit. But I had a lot of stuff that over the years that I've lost, and I've lost more money doing it that way, and it's not worth it for me to have those months worth of meals frozen in there because I've just lost too much food over the years from power outages and things like that. So that's why I dehydrate more of our stuff. But you have to be, if I would lose electricity right now, I would be okay, Well, not totally, because I wouldn't be able to talk to you guys, but that's the only thing I haven't figured out yet. Yeah. But so it was rough. So it took us 10 days, and I couldn't work. So when I said I had setbacks, I was such a tight budget at this point. I mean, I was bringing a little bit in, but I hadn't put a whole lot of product out yet. And so I was having to buy supplies, which was using a lot of the money. So a week's worth of wages was huge for me to lose. And I couldn't do as much work, to get the work done that I needed to. So this 10 days really affected me in a lot of different ways, being without the electricity. And I had to figure out how for us to eat. And actually, we did pretty good. You'd be amazed at how many, you can eat cans of pork and beans. You can eat peanut butter in sandwiches if you had to. And I think I did keep some milk in a cooler for a little bit. With some ice. I bought some ice and kept the ice and milk in the cooler for a little bit, and that helped somewhat. But you can do an amazing amount even though you can't cook. So finally they got the electricity back on for me. And so we're up and running, and we're going strong for I think a couple of weeks, at least 3 weeks or something. And it was like this time period, besides trying to start the business, it was like boom, boom, boom. We just had this one thing, that just kept going each time. And I went and what was, I know. I couldn't figure out why I didn't have any hot water one day. The hot water wasn't doing anything. And I thought, what in the world? Couldn't figure out. So the pilot light was on the hot water heater, but no, it wasn't. It was off, the pilot light, and I tried getting it turned on. That didn't. Come to find out, they turned my gas off. So the company said, you owe this amount of money, and until you pay it, you can't, the gas is going to stay off. And they wanted me to pay $800 on top of the bill to get it turned on. Huge amount of money. It was outrageous. So it was all from Dad's that year that he hadn't paid any of the gas bill. It wasn't mine because I had this stuff in my name and I paid the gas bill for our stuff. This was all the leftover stuff from his.
And we were getting into winter now.
Yeah, this is the
It was
first
starting to get cold. Yeah.
And but the worst part was we had no hot water, so I couldn't had to do all the laundry in cold water, which was, I could survive. But I had to boil pans of water on the stove. Thank goodness I had electric stove. That's another reason I kind of keep an electric stove, to have things covered a little bit for different areas. So I had to boil water on the stove and carry it in and pour. I think you had to do like 4 or 5 pots of water to put in the bathtub for us to take a bath. And it was a job, because I only got, when I didn't fill the tub up. It only made about 4 to 5 inches. I don't know if you even remember that, but it was only like 4 or 5 inches. Had to carry these boiling pots of water into the bathroom. And I hear people say, there's no way I could not have a shower every single day. Listen, it was so much work for each one of us to take a bath and carry those pots after pots. And you've got to realize, I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning, working until like 10 o'clock at night, all day long, having to do the usual mom stuff, all that kind of stuff. And now I'm having to boil water and carry pots of water in and do that.
Well, and there's a reason why 150 years ago people took a bath once a week.
Exactly.
Because it would take them 2 to 3 hours, if not longer, just to get enough water boiled to take a bath.
I laugh at these historical novels that people write, and they say, oh, she got her tub out each day and filled it with water in the 1860s. I thought, no way. No way. Well, another thing, too, people didn't realize, back then they thought it was a kind of a sin to look at your body. Mm-hmm. So they didn't want to, take baths very much, and that type of thing. But anyway,
Not to mention hauling the water.
Yeah, hauling it. You had to haul it in. I just got it out of the faucet, but to have to haul it then. But it was funny. The hardest part of anything was washing my hair, because I had to put hot water in a pitcher and then put cool water in. But I didn't have the strength to hold that pitcher full of water too heavy above my head, so I couldn't fill it too full. So I would have to wet my hair and get that, and then I'd have to take and set the pot down with this dripping hair and refill it with hot water, and then pour it again onto my head. And then that motion where you try to kind of rub your stomach and pat your head. It was like I was trying to do, it was the most uncoordinated thing I ever did. And I could not get the suds while I'm pouring, and I couldn't get that to go. It was really hard washing my hair. Well, then, as if it wasn't tough enough, I got sick. I got really, really sick with the flu. And it wasn't just the type of flu where I feel horrible, I feel gaggy, I just have a headache and feel miserable type of thing. This was the type of flu, if you've ever had it, where it just knocks you flat on the bed and you can't crawl out. I mean, you can't get your muscles to move. You can't move. So here, we had to go, it was almost a week then before I could boil. I didn't want you guys doing it. You were too little to be carrying hot pots of water. Everybody's seen your cooking prowess in the kitchen.
Right.
So,
it's not about my cooking.
11 years old, you can imagine there's no way I was going to let you go near the stove at this point. No offense, daughter of mine, but anyway. So then I got sick, so here we went even longer without taking a shower. It was horrible, and my hair was so dirty, and you guys were getting funky, but we finally, so then it turned bitter cold. We're up to I went months. Let me backtrack, or let me say this. I didn't have the money to pay the gas, period. So I just did without gas. It was that simple. I had no money, so I did without it. Most people would never dream of doing that now. Mm-hmm. They would figure out a way to get somebody else to pay it or charge it on a credit card. People keep saying, well, how did you save? How did you get out of debt? I didn't spend the money. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was desperate times, and I did not spend the money, even when it was that desperate.
Well, and all the time on our Living on One Income video, I will get people all the time that says, well, I feel that family vacations are an experience for our family, and we just need that experience of traveling. And I think you really did a disservice to your family by not traveling because they've lost out on all those experiences, and that's just horrible. And finally, the other day I wrote back and said, okay, did you want me to not pay my mortgage? Do you want me not to pay my electric bill? No food? If the money's not there, it's not there. That does not give you an excuse to go charge this stuff.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Well, and most people everywhere in the world for all of history haven't done that, except in the last 50 years in the United States.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Americans are just spoiled brats. And I mean, they are, period.
We've just been kind of brainwashed into believing that we deserve it, and if you don't have the money for it, you just charge it or have somebody else provide it for you. But you had a sense of integrity, that it was not honorable if you had debt. It was not honorable if you depended on other people for everything. And people did a lot of stuff for me, but I never asked for it to happen. I never really asked for anything. And that type of thing, you have to get rid of your pride in a sense and accept it. You have to allow people to do things sometimes for you, but it's a totally different type attitude. Mm-hmm. I didn't even tell people that I needed things. And as a matter of fact, that's what I was going to say next was, one night we were first of all, it got cold all of a sudden. Right after Halloween, it got really cold. And of course, I'd always had the heat as a backup. I hadn't used it for a couple of years, but I at least knew it was there in an emergency. I didn't have that now because we had no gas. And it got really cold, and we were hauling in firewood again, that type of thing. So we had that mess besides hauling pots of water. And I'm thinking, I know everybody loves homesteading and doing stuff, but I love my modern conveniences. I know what it's like. If I had to do it again, I could do it in a heartbeat, but I'm going to enjoy my modern conveniences as long as I can. But anyway, I started running out of firewood because I hadn't prepared. If you've ever lived with just a wood, heated with only wood, like you guys know.
It takes a lot of wood.
It takes a lot of wood, and you have to get it ready in June. You don't wait until November, December to start chopping your wood down to use in the fireplace. You have to have it ready, 6 months or more ahead of time, even longer.
Because wood has to dry out before you can use it, for those people who don't know. So
you just can't wait until the last second. So I'm running out of wood. All my resources were gone. And I was trying to figure out, where am I going to get wood? Where am I going to get wood? Because I really needed the wood this time. Well, we went to church on Sunday morning, and I sat down. Of course, I was up front. Nobody sat in the whole
I remember that.
pew next to us.
We were all by ourselves.
We always sat all by ourselves. Nobody would sit by us. There was one older man. He was new to the church, and he started sitting behind us. But it was kind of empty on his row too. It was like we were leopards, but he didn't know who we were and didn't know, so he didn't have a clue. So he just sat behind us. He was an older guy. And so I sat down in church that morning, and I just say hi to him, but I didn't really know him too well. I just speak and say hi. And he sat down behind me, and he tapped on my shoulder before church started. And he said, I'm brand new to church. And he said, I have a ton of firewood, and I'm not using my fireplace this year. Do you know anybody in the church that could maybe use some firewood? And I'm thinking, yes. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had to go pick it up then that week, but, and haul it in the trunk and everything and that type of thing.
In the trunk of the car, not a truck.
Yeah.
In the trunk of our car. She would haul, like 30, 40 pieces at a time of these, they weren't huge.
Were you still having to turn left?
No, I was beyond that now.
Oh, okay, good.
I was bitter now. So I had to haul it that week, but at least we had firewood. I was so excited. Well, then fast forward, it was getting close to Thanksgiving at this point. I think it was like just right before Thanksgiving. And of course, I had the back of the house shut off because we were just heating that part now. And the front of the house, we had a cold snap that was just unbearable. And there was a knock at the front door, and it was later. It was about 7:30 because I had your beds ready on the kitchen floor for you to sleep in there, and I couldn't figure out who would be coming that late at night. So, we had more people for nobody having anything to do with us. We had more people showing up at my front door at weird times. But anyway, I went there, and it was the associate pastor and his wife. And he was also my Sunday school teacher, and he said that they were going to try to visit all the Sunday school members. And I remember thinking later on, and you'll know why I said this later on, I thought, I'm so glad my name started with C, because we would have been in sorry shape if he hadn't come to visit us until January, because he went and told him to come on in, and I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, I'm just heating the back part of the house, and I said, I'm going to have to ask you to leave your coats on because it's freezing in here. Me and my preachers, the last ones, and the one they had their feet propped up on wood, and carpet and all this, the whole mulberry experience and picking the nose and everything. So they came in and they had their gloves and their coat and scarves.
It was cold. It really was cold. There was ice.
In the medicine cabinet. You can imagine how cold it was. I even had to run back. I said, excuse me, and I ran back and got my coat so I could come back in to sit and visit with them. It was so cold in there. And so we visited not too long, and he said, are you doing okay? Do you need anything? And I said, I think I lied. I don't know. I was doing fine. Maybe in other people's eyes it wasn't doing fine, but in my eyes I thought it was. I said, oh no, we're doing just fine. He said, are you sure? And I said, oh yeah, And they left. After he left, there was a couple at our Sunday school class that worked at the gas company. And he started doing some research and sent them to go check into it because he knew something was fishy. It was so cold in the house. And he found out that they turned the gas off. And so they went and gathered up the money. And I think it was like the day after Thanksgiving or something, they turned the heat back on for me. I was so grateful. And that's, sometimes you have to accept, And it wasn't like I was begging or, that type of thing. They just went and did it for me. So even though nobody was speaking to me, they still once in a while, something like that would happen. And
and it's not like for us nowadays, and I get it if, okay, I need to say this delicately because I'm not the most delicate person.
When I'm laughing.
But it really chaps my hide. I'm just going to say it, sorry. Really chaps my hide when I see people going to the food bank with their iPhone.
Yeah.
And they're going to the food bank.
Yeah.
I totally understand if you don't have a landline or whatever and you need a cell phone, you can get a $20 jobby and use that. Mm-hmm. You don't need to be getting an iPhone with a $200 payment a month.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to the food bank. It's wrong. It's flat out wrong.
Yeah.
To be asking for stuff like that when you're not doing your part to try and pull your own weight.
What it boils down to is you have to be willing yourself to sacrifice everything you possibly can for your own discomfort. I mean, you got to give up everything yourself before you start asking others to start sacrificing for you,
And I'm not talking about people who have got a legitimate need and who are trying everything they can. I totally understand that.
That's why I'm saying you're sacrificing everything you can. But when you're not sacrificing anything on your part and you're expecting other people to help you, that's different. It's like some people have medical bills, and I know these happen, and trust me, I understand the medical bills. Tar and Mike have had them, it's horrible. But I know a woman that she knew she was going to lose her job, and she kept spending. She was spending $200 to $300 a month on her hobby. She bought a thing that cost $6,000 for her hobby. They were going to the casino. They go out to eat probably 5 times, a week at least. And she knew she was going to lose her job, and her husband got cancer. And they still kept spending the money. he no longer could work, and they were still spending. Well, then she says, well, I was so thankful because I found out they're going to pay for our medical premium for us. But she's given up nothing. She still pays to have exercise classes at the gym, and she's still going out and buying like nothing's happening. And that's what the difference is. If she was giving up a lot of her stuff and then accepting it, but people aren't giving up, they don't want to give up anything, They want other people to pay for their needs so they can keep buying their wants. Is pretty much what it boils down.
That's what it boils down to, is they just do not want to give up the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm sorry, but that's not real life. That's called being a child.
Really right. That's really not right,
Yeah.
So, but anyway, well, you know what? Okay, this is really going to make it go long. I'm sorry. But it's like the story I love this story of the grasshopper and the ant. The grasshopper spent all summer frolicking, playing, doing fun stuff, and the ant worked and worked and worked, harvesting, bringing things into his home, saving, getting prepared for winter. And the grasshopper was mocking him and saying, why don't you just play and have fun? Because, you're just working, and it's summer, it's time to have fun and enjoy yourself, and do all this fun stuff. And the ant just kept plugging along, saving up. Winter comes, and and snow hits, and the grasshopper has nothing to eat. Not one thing for his family. And here's the ant is safe and secure in his home with plenty. And the grasshopper comes and says, give me some of your stuff. And the ant says, no, I'm sorry. I really am sorry, I can't. And the grasshopper's in this blizzard. I have a little picture book where he's in the blizzard, and he has no food. And I used to think, is that right? Should the ant have gone ahead and given him stuff? Being a Christian and that type of thing, I think, was that okay if somebody, when you've worked so hard and they've just frolicked and played, and then you say, well, no, I'm not going to share with you? But I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Joyce who gave this example of the 12 virgins in the Bible that were supposed to prepare. Was it you were even telling me that you were supposed to prepare your lamps? And 6 of them just didn't have enough and didn't prepare, and the other 6 prepared for when the bridegroom was coming. They had to have these lamps of oil prepared for when the bridegroom came. 6 of them didn't prepare, and the other ones did. Well, when the bridegroom was coming, the 6 that didn't have anything kept begging for the 12 virgins to share with them, and they said, no, we prepared, but we're sorry. And so I think scripturally that still is really right in a way.
And here's the thing.
Cruel, but
there are people that are telling you to be prepared. We're one of them.
Yeah.
So listen.
Yeah.
Don't just let it go in one ear and then out the other. Don't come to me when the floods are coming because you didn't get your water filter already. Don't come to me when, the economy completely collapses, which it's going to one day. It may not be anytime soon, but one day it will, because you cannot sustain this kind of
logically this won't
spending.
Keep working.
It just is not going to work. But there are people like us, and that's partly why, even though we're not homesteaders, we're on the Homestead Network. Because we were saying this with you, I was saying this with just you the other day. I feel like even though we're not homesteaders, we are here trying to tell people, stop relying on everybody for everything. Start doing some stuff yourself. Learn how to do this stuff. And be prepared. So
anyway, we went and they turned the gas back on, and now it's just like 3 weeks before Christmas. And so I didn't have a whole lot of money, but I think we'll stop here and go to wait for the next video for me to explain what happened at Christmas time. Will that work?
That'll work. So Mom wrote 500 ways I live on $500 a month. Penny Pension Mama. And this is all the tips on how you survived. So this tells how we made it when we didn't have the gas, what we did and that kind of thing. what we did for groceries, entertainment, what we did for toiletries, that kind of thing. And no, we didn't make our homemade toiletries either. That's not actually a good way to save money. But
as a matter of fact, all in the next video or two, I will explain on the toiletries.
So Penny Pension Mom is 500 ways I saved $500 or lived on $500 a month. Now this is the print version. We are getting really low on these. So if you want a print copy, get it, because honestly, I have no idea how long these are gonna last. Maybe just a week or two, I don't know for sure. But if you want it in print, grab it, because otherwise it's gonna be an ebook when we're done. And they're half price right now. So anyway, go check us out on livingonadime.com, and we will be back for the next installment.